Hello, hello. Currently just getting everything set up to start rendering. Having a little bit of trouble with the Vega 56, which isn't super new of a problem, but I have modified VBIOS on these, so some of them are probably going to have issues in Windows, but we will see if I can get them to go just fine. So the hope is that for the Vega 56 and Vega 64, hopefully if somebody has one around, they can still use it just fine in Blender. But uh, they're definitely they're definitely not a good purchase. So I wouldn't go buy one for Blender, even if I can actually get one to work. Hardware and drivers. Okay. Blender will recognize it. So let's try to open up a scene here quick. Windows is recognizing it as just a RX Vega, so that one's a little weird. If I can't get it to render here in just a second, I'll try a different card later on. I have a few Vega 56. Let's run it without HIPRT. Go to GPU and hit render image. Okay, last time, right as it started to run a sample, the PC crashed and remote desktop crashed out, which kind of looks like that's what's going to happen here too. Yep. Nice. Okay, well, we'll put that one on the shelf for now. I do know the 5600 is working, so we'll focus on render 3, which is the 5700 XT, and render 10, which is the 2080 Ti Kingpin. So we'll focus on those for now. And I'll probably have to download a original VBIOS for the Vegas if I want them to work in Blender. I have noticed before that anything you do in Blender, um, overclocks don't necessarily work. I've had a lot of crashing if I try to overclock a GPU. So I imagine that modifying the VBIOS is just as bad. But I think that's kind of what happened. Is it's had so many little tweaks to it. I don't know that it'll work in Windows very well. So I'll have to get one of those set back to factory default. But um, okay, these are actually out of date, and this one's out of date. Okay, so we're gonna go just start adding extra GPU tests to these lists. So the first one here, I have the 5700 XT with the classroom scene. So we'll render that one. It is fine with OC in Blender. 2.9 gigahertz in games, 3.5 in Blender. Don't know why. You know, I think the bigger problem is that um, I've created instability from modifying the BIOS on the GPU. So with those Vega cards, when you would mine on them, you have to change some of the VRAM settings. Um, to get better mining capacity and you bypass certain settings. So I'm sure trying to run that in Windows is going to cause some problems because mining's a lot more simple of a process than rendering or doing multiple different tasks. So um, I'm glad you can get yours to go up to, what'd you say, 3.5? That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's fast. I saw somewhere somebody got a RTX 4090 to run at 4090 megahertz. So that was kind of cool to see. I don't know. I don't know how stable that would be. Obviously, that was on nitrogen, but yeah. So I've just always found that modifying a lot, and I'm not a great overclocker anyway. I'm more of a one-click overclock kind of guy generally, just because I found that I don't know enough to make a huge difference. But let's see. Actually, let's see what this one's doing. 70 degrees. I just want to make sure these don't get too warm because they have mined on and off, so I want to make sure the fans aren't all dead. Looks like it's okay. 70 degrees on the GPU is not really that bad. Okay, but we got a result here. So this is Blender 3.6. We have 1 minute and 48 seconds. So let's throw that on here. 1 minute and 48 seconds. 108 seconds. Okay. And this is with HIP RT. Nice, nice. And the classroom scene is super easy to run. So we'll just go ahead and load Barbershop. I don't really want to test RT versus not RT on um, the 5000 series and before because they don't have designated ray tracing cores. So I don't think it'll make any difference. But feel free to yell at me in the comments if you think that that's wrong. I mean, I can test them. I don't think it will probably change it a whole lot. Where do we have that at? Barbershop. And I did download the Lone Monk scene, but I was having some sort of an error that I couldn't figure out. I think it was in optics, so maybe I'll try it again with AMD GPUs, but definitely was really weird. It was like there were missing assets in the scene. Okay. Yep, yep, yep. I'm going to go to frame 100 because that's what I was testing the other day. Then we can compare these results to my other ones. And then we have HIP RT again with the 5700. So we'll start that one. Okay, and I guess just so everyone knows what I'll be doing, this is what I'll be doing for this stream. So I'll be bouncing back and forth between computers a lot. So if you have questions, let me know. But I just think it's a lot more fun to sit and hang out on the stream than it is to sit alone and stare at tiles rendering. So, okay, that one's not too bad. So I actually have quite a few results here from the 6000 series. And maybe I'll incorporate those into my classroom scene. But so 108 seconds is what the 5700 XT took to do the classroom scene. So if we look um, at the results here, even the 6600 was about 30 seconds faster than the 5700 XT. So the 5700 XT was, I I think, a very popular GPU, and I think for gaming it's still a decent one. Not for 4K, but anything lower, it's going to be great. So if we compare the 79 seconds of the 6600 versus the 108 seconds of the 5700 XT, that's a really crazy result. Like the 6600 is a really good GPU. People get hung up on budget versus high end versus whatever, but look at that leap in generations, and this one isn't even the same series, if you will. So that's awesome. And that's why I want to test some of the new low end 7000s and maybe the 4060 Ti 16 gig, because I think people looking for render machines will overlook budget ones. I think at some point you're still gonna lose efficiency because each GPU might have 150 watts of actual graphics power and then 20 or 30 watts of board power that is not actually running the card. And the more GPUs you have, the more smaller GPUs, the more your power bill adds up without adding extra render speed for it. So, I think one big GPU is always going to beat a whole bunch of little ones. But if you have Dell machines like I have and you only have so much space, then those little efficient ones are perfect because you can fit two of them and they don't use a lot of power. So Edgar says iGPUs helped a lot in my case, and the M1 has a tiny iGPU in comparison to Pro or Max. Yeah, I need to test. I need to test some Apple, and Edgar the Face sent me some benchmark results from different hardware that I don't have. So I will be adding those to my spreadsheet. I'm not gonna probably do it on here. I might pull them up though, but that's super good information because I know a lot of people are using Macs to do Blender work. But yeah, iGPUs helped a lot, and that's the other thing. The newer CPUs have really decent iGPUs in them too. So it's not even, I kind of used to think of them as just running the displays, and that's about it. But um, the newer ones are getting to the point where they can outperform like a 1060, which was a super popular GPU for years and years. So, and maybe even beyond. I don't keep up with them that much, but yeah, I think they're definitely getting fast enough that here soon maybe we won't even need external GPUs for gaming or light work anyway. The M1 has a tiny iGPU. Yeah, so the so the M1 GPU is just a lot more efficient, you mean? Versus like having a big heavy high power draw one in the older models. Okay. Let's see to while this is still going, let's go to render 10 and see how this Kingpin's doing. Like we were we were trying to get Blender 3.6 installed and that looked like that went fine. This render 10 machine shouldn't have any problems. This one had two 3080 Ti's in it. And yeah, I don't even think we need a driver update. So let's see how this works. Edgar says it's like a quarter of the M1 Pro or so and still managed to give a speed up. So it's a quarter of the power draw or the size or what? The base M1 is more like a beefed up tablet CPU. Okay. Huh. Okay. Looks like the Kingpin is good to go. Yeah, and that's the beauty of it all. In in 1 or 2 more generations, you're going to be able to buy the low end graphics card from any generation. Hopefully not for $1,000, but you know, the $300 or $400 GPUs are gonna beat a 3090 here in a few years, um, and they'll probably have as much VRAM. So you know, just the way things go in general are definitely friendly to the consumer, even if they don't look like it. You know, even if people think the prices just keep going up, but you know, if you're using them for rendering or making money on them, they really are getting powerful at such a fast pace that it almost doesn't matter. Obviously, if you're just buying one for fun, it's frustrating though. Okay. Let's load Classroom here on the Kingpin. This is Blender 3.6 Classroom scene. This is the 2080 Ti Kingpin from EVGA. Rest in peace, EVGA. Unfortunately, they are kind of unwinding their business, or at least that's the rumor. But oh, Edgar says I also want to test Intel Iris Xe, but that was a very short support time frame. They added Intel Iris Xe GPU rendering via OpenCL in 2.92, and then switched to one API in 3.x. Yeah, so it worked for like a few months, and now you have CPU rendering or need an ARC. Yeah, yeah, I wasn't super familiar with that, but I do know sometimes the support of things just kills it. Like I've been afraid of AMD GPUs before Blender 3, but I posted a video a while ago. I think it was when 3.3 came out, and they added support for Vega series GPUs. So, you know, I think they've got like HIP is actually somewhat decent for support. The one I'm curious about, I actually did get um, an Arc A770. Um, Newegg had a fantastic deal on it this past week, so I do have a 770 coming in the mail, or an A770, I think that's what they call it, with the 16 gigs of VRAM. So I will finally get to test an Intel GPU in Blender. So that's exciting. If you look at their release notes for 3.6, they claim that Intel had a massive upgrade in render speed too. AMD GPUs got one, and I think Intel's was like 30 or 40%. Um, okay, question. Any tips getting Blender Cycles rendering to work with 6950 XT? Blender crashes immediately after choosing HIP and Cycles. Um, let me show you. Let me show you something. Um, and Edgar, who's in the chat here, might be helpful. And maybe you were asking Edgar, but I, the newer AMD GPUs, I normally have no problems with. My one question is, do you have any sort of BIOS mod on it or overclock? Because I know I've had bad overclocks, and my Vega 56s have BIOS mods, and those definitely will cause Blender to not render. So if those aren't the case, then we can look into what else is going on. Blender crashes immediately. Is it when you try to start a render, or is it when uh like can you load the render or the material previews? Slight undervolt. Okay. That could be the problem, but I really doubt it. Edgar says they're able to get their GPUs to overclock just fine. GPU of the CPU was activated. Just tried updating drivers. Um, yeah, that's a tough one. So you updated drivers. Obviously, that's the first thing everybody's going to tell you to do. Let me try to get render 4 loaded up again. This one keeps crashing, and I imagine it's probably a similar situation. What else? What else can it be? I have found that when your AMD graphics card is compatible with the version of Blender you're using, it shows up just fine in the preferences, and then everything seems to work fine after that. Default cube, just choosing HIP in preferences and then clicking view mode to rendered. It's fine with Eevee, but if I choose cycles, it dies. And are you in Blender 3.6? Because if you're using an old enough version of Blender, I could see where that might not support. Well, no, those should go back pretty far. Um, hmm. Let me show you what mine does here real fast. Actually, we want Blender 3.6, not 3.5. Edgar's asking, is it an Intel or AMD CPU with an iGPU installed? 3.4 will update that too. Yeah, Edgar says if yes, try to disable the iGPU in the BIOS. Yep, and I don't have experience with this exact problem, so I'll show you what mine does. But 3.4 should definitely support your 6950 XT. But the one thing I'll say is that 3.6 did get a big speed boost for AMD GPUs, and your 6950 is a good candidate for that, so I would definitely upgrade anyway, if you can. Started searching help and ended up here. Oh, how do I say your name? I-A-A-K-K-I. That's a hard one for me. Um, I was literally testing this at the moment, started searching help, and ended up here. Hey, that's awesome. I'm glad you're here. Uh, we'll try to get it figured out for you. I think we're definitely not probably super experts, but Yaki. Okay. Okay. So here's what mine does. We'll see if it looks familiar or not. So I'm in 3.6. This is a Vega 56. Now notice mine doesn't show up properly in the settings. So Windows just thinks it's a RX Vega, which is just it's not missing, it's missing information. And then it lets me get to this point. I'll switch to Cycles GPU Compute. And then let's close this menu and let's actually see. As soon as I try to render, it just crashes. Okay, so the viewport render works. Yaki says, do I install Pro or Adrenaline drivers? I've been using the Adrenaline drivers. Yeah. 23.7.1 for HIPRT. Yep. Look, and there we go. There's the crash. So I definitely think I need to try to find one of my Vegas with a BIOS that's not modified. Which I have them in a folder. I'll have to reflash it, but probably won't do that on here. But yeah, so mine starts rendering and then crashes. Yours must not be like that. Yeah, I would get, so get the Adrenaline 2371. And then if you get Blender 3.6, you should also get a large speed boost too. Yaki says that I get further on mine. It dies immediately when pressing the viewport button. Oh, okay. It's possible. It's possible that the proper driver will help. Does it die or does Blender just close? I will. This computer's just in the other room. I think I'll have to go watch because the PC will reboot on its own if it causes the PC to crash. So I think it's just Blender, but it also crashes the remote desktop for some reason. Edgar says, in my case, Blender closed, but everything else worked. Yeah, see, here's the same machine. So it crashes Blender, kicks me out of remote desktop, and then the PC is still on. Yucky says, "Cool. I'm making pinball games. By the way, we have our own tools for Blender that create nest maps, etc. Super nice stuff. Hey, yeah, that's awesome. So you have your own tools for Blender. So you've created add-ons then. So do you create the games entirely in Blender, or is it like create assets in Blender and then Unreal Engine or Unity or something? Okay, very cool. Yeah, that's something I definitely want to do someday. VPX for now. Huh. Yeah, I want to start making low poly characters, which I've had a stream about that too recently. I want to make a whole bunch of them and make some sort of little game in Unreal Engine. VPE in future, that is Unity stuff. Very cool. I wonder if I've always wondered if I should start learning Unity or Unreal Engine or what the best direction is, but I suppose there's no solid answer for that, is there? It's probably a lot more complicated question than that. V Bouquet has made the Blender add-on for importing VPX. Okay, well that's cool. Ah, yep. All right. I'm giving up on Vega for now. Yeah, so if you get those adrenaline drivers, let us know if that worked or not. We can definitely keep looking around while we're working on these. Um, okay. It looks like so the 5700 XT, I'll just grab my results here since they're sitting here. 5 minutes and 56 seconds. So 5 times 60. I am way too tired to do math, so I'm not going to. Yaki says, if you want to learn more about pinball dev, we have a Discord with all the cool guys. Hey, that's awesome. Yeah, sure, send it. I might as well check it out. You can you can put a link in here if you want to or get a hold of me separate. So, that's up to you. That is definitely one thing I need to do is get a Discord going, and I know that Edgar is probably going to tell me that again here soon, but um with Blender and tutorials and all that, I made one use invite link. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I need to set one up because I'd like to share files, especially tutorial files and stuff. Um, didn't know how to DM you. Well, yeah, if you don't want it in here, if you want to if you don't want to post a link in here, you could what could we do? You can always use the um email. Edgar says, "See, you do technical tutorial videos and instantly get people coming." Yeah, yeah. I mean, and they're nice. It's nice to help people um, figure out problems, and I have the luxury of having a whole bunch of different GPUs I can test and different systems I can work on. So I don't always know everything, but I can always try to help. And yes, Edgar, I have noticed just on my channel that anything anything at all that's computer related will get more views over time than my art stuff will. But um, the real passion is the art stuff, and in the pursuit of learning the art stuff, I've also learned how to build and use computers. So that kind of grew out of that, and I'd say they're super related. That's why my channel does both. Hopefully, people actually agree with that, and they don't just wonder why I have both of those things on one channel. But okay, so our 2080 Ti did 23 seconds for the render of the classroom. Okay, 23. So, and this was in optics. Let's just add this just for clarity. We are in Blender 3.6 for all these tests today. So the 2080 Ti is more than 4 times faster than the 5700 XT on the classroom scene. That doesn't surprise me, um, especially because this model of 2080 Ti is one of the best ones they made. So let's open up the barbershop scene, and we'll see how the 2080 Ti does on there. I think for this one, I'm going to. Could you compare HIP versus HIPRT on 57? Yeah. Yep. I will start the um, barbershop scene here on the 2080 Ti real fast, and then I'll hop back over there. Uh-oh. I gotta get my error code to pop back up again. I always forget every time you upgrade Blender, you have to change a couple things. Yes, I need the scripts. Here we go. Allow. Come on, work. Thank you. As much as I love using Blender, sometimes these crashes just get me. On Apple, you can activate Metal RT, but it's actually a bit slower, but saves a lot of RAM. So in edge cases, it can help. Well, yeah, and if you have scenes with massive RAM requirements, that's that's super helpful. I've tried to get SLI to work or NVLink to work in Blender, and I've never been able to. But you know, that's the thing. If you're out of RAM, you're just out of RAM. There's nothing you can do about it. So so there's Metal RT, and then what else is there? Because on a Windows system, that doesn't. I don't have I don't have an option. So what else is there? There's Metal RT and then just normal metal, or what? Okay, so starting up the Kingpin here on the Barbershop. And this thing is probably not a good sample of a 2080 Ti because it's significantly better than a reference model. I think it's anywhere from 15 to 20% overclocked just on the all-in-one cooler. And you can see here, um, probably maybe you can't see it. It's too small, but just running Task Manager here, the GPU is running at 33 degrees in full bore. So this thing's rendering at full bore, and it's only getting up. Now it's 34 Celsius. So um, they're just fantastic cards, and I'm glad I was able to get one because I didn't ever expect EVGA would disappear, and I've got a couple of their cards, and now I feel like they're just going to end up being collectibles, kind of. Edgar says Metal uses compute shaders, and Metal RT could use RT cores that don't exist yet in Apple Silicon, but the fallback on compute shaders saves a lot of RAM and is just a bit slower. Okay, well that's cool. Yeah, I mean, at very least, it's just another option, you know? It's always good to have an option because, um, like GPUs are great, but if you don't have enough VRAM, you can render in multipass to save VRAM and then compile them. But at that point, you might as well have a slower GPU with more RAM. So, but yeah, that gives you some flexibility for your scenes. So that's awesome. But okay, um, sheesh. So so the 2080 Ti Kingpin ripped through this test. 1 minute and 48 seconds. We'll call it 49. We'll round up. Barbershop 2080 Ti. We'll label it in there. Minute 49. We'll call it that. 109 seconds. Wow. Okay. I think that's actually really good. I don't know if I tested my other Nvidia cards yet. I don't think so, but um that one is slightly slower than a 6600 doing the classroom. That's pretty cool. But okay. Now let's go back to render 3. This one is the 5700. So let's test HIP versus HIP-RT. Yaki says invite link didn't come through here. I didn't see one, no. But I found another way to DM you Instagram message. Hey, there you go. That works too. Yes, I will. I will check that out here once I'm done with the stream. What I can do too is, and we'll talk. But if you want me to share it or not, we can discuss that, and I can definitely post it on here somewhere if you would like that. So just let me know. Edgar says, when it comes to art and technical stuff, I try to get a good technical foundation before focusing on art. Otherwise, the waiting will drive me mad. I get that. I get that. And I just, I became fascinated with computers while trying to learn to 3D model. And, I know guys, though, that have been able to create very, very cool scenes, and they had no external GPU at all. They had just a very old iGPU. So it's it's definitely it's definitely good to try to learn both because, at some point we'll never be happy with the hardware we have. And um I think that's just how it works. But no, I get what you mean. Like if I go get into Blender with a 4-core processor and try to do any sculpting, it would make me so frustrated because I'm used to 16 cores. So I get what you mean. Like you have to have at least a certain amount of speed for it to be user friendly. But Yaki says, yeah, it'd be great to see what the boys have cooked up. It is so awesome. Yeah, I'll come check it out. That's awesome. Thanks for inviting me to that. So it's a tool that can bake lighting for hundreds of light sources, and then we connect that into a ROM code that is written in the 90s. Nice. I don't know. I don't know what half of that sentence means, so I will come check it out. Um, Edgar, since you wanted me to test this, do you want me just to stay in 3.6 and turn HIPRT on and off? Because we just did the HIPRT one, so I'll just turn off this checkbox and then we'll run it again. So let me know if you'd rather me go back to 3.5. Oh, hold on. I was wondering if it was really that much slower. And keep track of the VRAM. Ah, okay. Yes, I can do that. Um, I should really get hardware info, but I'm just going to cheat and use Task Manager because that'll give us a good enough idea. But I forgot to take it off of CPU and put it on GPU. I was wondering why it was so slow, and then it's like, man, did HIP updates really get that big for 5700? Yeah, see, this looks better. Okay. So this is the 5700 XT classroom scene with HIP RT turned off. Blender does show it in the info line. I just think that's Blender specific, and I'm not sure if it's system usage. So I guess either way, I'll do the comparison and see what the VRAM total usage is, and then just get the difference, if that makes sense. So Windows is telling me that we're only using 2.8 gigs of VRAM right now. And let's see. We can look. I am curious what. Scene stats. Oh, didn't they? They changed these. You can choose the compute or compute one chart. Yeah, there you go. There, you can actually see it working. Yeah, yeah, it is weird. It doesn't use the 3D when you render, which I guess kind of makes sense. It's not okay. A minute and right under 30 seconds. So we'll call it 90 seconds. Let's go compare. So this was the classroom RX 5700 XP or XT, sorry, 90, and this is with HIP. Okay, what's going on here? Um, well, I don't think I'm on the wrong one. According to this, if you run the 5700 XT on HIP, it's faster. Okay, but hold on. We need to run it again because I know that there's some amount of time where there's shader compiling and stuff the first time you run HIPRT. So let's check into that. So let's turn this back on and see if there's a bunch of loading time at the beginning. Because that result doesn't necessarily make sense other than any loading time at the front end will kill it because there's no RT cores on the 5700 XT. So any of the benefit probably doesn't go for those older cards. Let's see, we're using 3.8 gigs of VRAM right now, according to Windows Task Manager. And let's see, now, well, apparently, there it is. We had to find it. Apparently, it's using a different compute in Task Manager, but now we're using 3.8 gigs of VRAM. This is with HIP RT, so the VRAM requirement went up. And we'll see if it's any faster or not. But Yaki says, installed latest Adrenaline 3.6 LTS blender enabled HIP, chose cycles and clicked on rendered viewport, and then still crashes. That is no fun. I'm sorry about that. So yeah, if you don't have an iGPU, I guess the only other thing you could do is save your undervolt profile and then try to take your undervolt off. And I think Edgar will debate with me whether or not that's useful because he's got his overclocked quite a bit. So that's maybe not the solution, but Edgar says, which CPU is it? Okay, this test took 89 seconds. Yeah, see, there we go. That makes more sense. Or create a new profile for Blender specifically with more VCore or so. Yeah, no undervolt anymore, all in factory settings. Um, I don't want to sound like every IT guy that I know. Um, yeah, 5900X, you should be just fine with, you know, you're not having compatibility problems. You've got the new driver. Um, the other time I've had that before is when I don't have enough power. So I'd have to show you what I mean, but the Dell workstations I have, they have two 8-pin powers that come out of um a breakout board kind of thing. And if they detect more draw than they're supposed to get, they'll just shut off. So I think you're not probably dealing with that same situation, but would there be any reason that you might be trying to overdraw your power supply? But I guess it's not, it's just a blender crash, isn't it? It's not a system crash. Hmm. What else could it be? Blender starts to crash. You know what? You know what? Yaki, go to let me pull up a Blender scene here. Um okay, so this rendered on just I'll just report this real quick. This rendered on HIP-RT like 1 second faster than on HIP normal, and it uses 1 extra gig of VRAM in this test. So so there's the result for that. Basically, the front end loading the first time slowed it down on the first test, and now we have very similar results between the two. So um, yeah, let me open up this Blender scene quick. So what's the other thing you could have? So when you have your render properties, so now you're talking about just in the viewport, right, Yaki? The classroom is a bit lightweight for most GPUs now. Yeah, it is. I just start there because I can start to get some comparisons on paper. They don't take as long because I mean like the barbershop scene takes 6 minutes for this card, so or 6.5 maybe. But um yeah, Yaki, so okay. So right now we're trying to debug a 6950 XT problem in Blender. We have the newest version of Blender and current drivers. When when the scene is switched to rendered view mode or viewport shading mode, Blender crashes. So I'm wondering if all of your your viewport rendering settings are set up. Um, that shouldn't matter too much. But if you've switched hardware recently, I know one thing that I've had before is, say you have a denoise setting turned on, and I might have had optics turned on before, and then I switched GPUs to AMD. Some of the settings are still set improperly, and they're not compatible. All settings are factory. Okay, all right. I just thought I'd check. Um, Denoiser, open image denoiser. Yeah. So what else? What else? What else? It shouldn't be Windows. Are you using Windows, or are you in Linux, or what? I assume you're in Windows. I don't. Adrenaline's probably Windows only program, isn't it? Oh, Windows 10. Okay. Are you trying to run your processor when you're rendering on the GPU at all? So in your preferences, are you running both the CPU and the GPU? Could you try lowering the GPU clock by 300 to 500 megahertz? Maybe the 6950 XT is too far on the edge. Yeah, and that's a good point because and actually this Kingpin GPU, it's a 2080 Ti, and I did just the simple one-click overclock in EVGA's Precision X1 software, and it ran stable in GPU tests, and then as soon as I would get into Blender, it would crash Blender. It crashes even when selecting only CPU. Really? Um, Man, I don't want to tell you to have to revert your preferences, but if you know where all of your add-ons are and stuff, you can, if you come into the Blender preferences system. Well, no, you don't need system. Just come down to these three lines here, and you can say load factory preferences. The problem is that will uninstall add-ons. It will change any settings that you've got set. So what I would do is save your preferences to a file and keep them somewhere, and then load the factory preferences, because um, I've had it where I have add-ons that are not compatible with the current version of Blender. They'll automatically be installed if you just save the settings from the old one, and then it will just crash. I've had that before, so try that. Yaki says, "Well, this is weird. I probably found something. Wait a bit. Okay, good. Hopefully it works. Yeah, the CPU rendering should be super stable, so having that crash would be pretty strange. But my best example of what I was just saying is that I would try to bring characters over from Daz Studio with the diffeomorphic add-on, and that importer is a Blender add-on. And if I have that enabled when I'm working in Blender, the entire program is significantly slower. So if I'm going to import a character from Daz, I enable it, import the character, and then disable it right away. So it's definitely possible that like certain add-ons can um, cause stability issues. Edgar says only CPU worked always. except while pumping 240 watts through the 5950X instead of the normal 142. But it's not fun. Oh, but it's fun, yeah. So, so Edgar, did you overclock your 5950X to test it in Blender too? I'm curious how much you can actually get out of doing that. Yaki says, so the rendering works with F12 but not the viewport. Weird. That is really weird. Normally I always go test the viewport render to see if it's gonna function. That's actually what I just did on the screen here. And so you seem to have it backwards so that the viewport won't load, but the final render will. I mean, I guess if it works. The problem is then you can't see what it's going to look like, so that's unfortunate, but so if it's a viewport problem, yeah, what would be the issue? That is pretty weird. At least you got something to go. Yuan Ping Chen says I should upgrade to a 1080p streaming device. I I want to. I just don't have the internet speed yet. So, um I've been looking around. I added Starlink and it's just the problem is the problem is that um the upload speed is inconsistent and OBS Studio will crash out if the bitrate gets too low and then it ends my stream. So I have to lock it to a low bitrate that I know will always work. So I would love to get 1080p. I really would. And hopefully someday I'll be able to get fiber where I live, but for now I can't. Otherwise, yes, I absolutely would be on 1080p, or I'd really like 1440 if I could, just because that's native. But um, I know what you mean. I do. I want to do it. One option I could have is maybe switch to AV1 encoding because it's a lower file size or it's a less bitrate for the same quality supposedly. So if I could run everything on 1080p, I would. But I think I normally still have some problems doing that. Yaki says, yes, that limits work. We're talking about the render, um, the viewport rendering in Blender is crashing, but the final F12 render is not. So yes, that limits my work. Yeah. I mean, you can't see what the preview is. I was supposed to start adjusting materials for transparent plastics. Interesting. Yeah. There's got to be something messing with it. I would try the preferences thing again. So save your preferences somewhere so that you can find it. It'll just create a file and then load factory if you haven't done that and make sure it's not an add-on that's causing it. I think you might have said you already tried that. Otherwise, I don't know. Um I don't know what else it would be, but we'll keep looking around as we're going here. Edgar says got 15% overclock in multi-threading using PBO scaler and curve optimizer. 15% performance for 100 watts is not efficient, but it's fun to have the performance. Yeah, if you can get it stable, that's awesome. In cycle settings, there's the arrow by the denoise checkbox. Blender crashes if I press that arrow. Okay, in cycles, there's a really. So if you click Here, let me get out of this. We're testing the Lone Monk scene on the 5700 XT right now, so let me get out of that. On AMD, you can only use open denoise or nothing. Yes, so make sure you're not. Let me pull up one on my workstation here. Make sure you're not using. Let's see if we can get this to load. Make sure you're not using anything other than open image denoise. If it's set to something else, it might cause a problem. Otherwise, yeah, you can turn off denoising, and it probably won't look so bad. Yaki, did that work? Did that did that allow you to at least get a view? Cannot get into that menu. Um, so if you click the down arrow at all, it just crashes right away then. Is 6800 XT enough for mediocre blender? Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say any of the 8 gig cards from recently is a decent card. 4060 Ti is going to be probably I don't have those models. I would have to check, but I bet the 60 Ti is probably very competitive with the 6800 XT. Um, the denoising, the RT cores and stuff are just super helpful in Blender. But yeah, 6800 XT is great. I do have some benchmarks for that card. Let me find it here. So this is my results for my diamonds test scene, which is a 100 frame animation that's just some glass objects falling into water. And let's compare a couple for you. So the 6800 XT, it was my buddy's. I borrowed it, so I don't have it with me, and I haven't tested it on RT version of HIP yet. I really, really want to. But the 6800 XT ran my 100 frames in 115 minutes. So this is a huge test. So 115 minutes. Compare that to like RTX 4070 did it in 74 minutes. Let's see. Yaki says I can disable denoise, but it still crashes. Maybe you got Blender settings from someone who uses optics. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, Yaki, to have to debug it. The problem is Yaki just installed new drivers and a fresh version of Blender 3.6. Most likely even faster. It's kind of frustrating to see my 70 Ti mobile being nearly as fast as the 7900 XTX due to optics. Optics is just well, they're just so optimized, and as long as the drivers keep improving and software support comes, then AMD hardware is going to be just perfect. And they're still not slow, they're just not as fast for the dollar. So it's not really like, they're not useless, they're just not quite as fast for the dollar. And some in some cases for the same price range you can get more VRAM. HIP is comparable to CUDA, yeah. That that's probably pretty true, yeah. Optics just um, optimized RT and tensor cores on NVIDIA so much. It makes such a huge difference. Where does Blender make its crash dumps? I don't actually know. You may be able to find that in the preferences somewhere, and it might tell it where it saves them, but I don't really know. I'm not so much of a coding guy, so I wouldn't really go look at them. I would just get mad at Blender and then either stop for the night or try to avoid what I did. I'm gonna try again to render this. I couldn't get optics to. Yeah, see, I get this error when I try to run the Lone Monk scene in optics. I think it's just too old of a scene. The notes here say that it was made for 2.92, so I imagine that either I'm missing a setting or something's not compatible from 3.6. But it's talking about having certain nodes, and they're probably not in Blender anymore. That would be my guess. But I'm just going to run one on CUDA and see how this 2080 Ti does. Oh wait, what am I on? No, I'm on my desktop. Yeah. So we'll do it with the 4090. Okay, so we'll render it. Edgar says, got it running Lone Monk scene on the 3070 Ti mobile with newest drivers and 3.6 with optics. Really? Um, I wonder if I have certain denoising settings that are not compatible with it, maybe. Because it looks like it's got some light nodes, maybe, that it's not a fan of. Wondering why that would be. Let's see, where is. The only thing about it is I don't want to come in and change. I guess I am in 3.5 here. Maybe I'll try in 3.6. The only thing is I don't want to change any settings in the benchmark because I want to be able to compare it on all my machines. So it's better just to leave it with whatever it uh, came with set up so that I know I'm not making a bad test. Blender 3 point. This looks ridiculous, but I scale my user interface to 1080p to stream, so it moves all my icons around. Oops, we don't want to do that. Okay, we're gonna run Lone Monk. Um, Yaki says, okay, so debug prints, found precompiled kernels, and then it just disappears and kicks out to command line. Weird. I love seeing these cluttered desktop on other people's computers. Well, they're normally in nice clean rows across the screen. It's just when you resize your monitor um, resolution, they all move. So they're normally in rows grouped by what they do. But yes, I have a lot of things. Okay. Let's let's just see. Maybe 3.6 fixed it somehow. Loading render kernels. Come on, work. It is nice to have some more intense scenes to run on this 4090 though. Like if we look at the benchmark results for this diamond scene, it does 100 frames of this relatively intense rendering at 33 minutes. So it does 3 minutes a frame is all. Or no, sorry, three frames per minute. I had that backwards. Okay, is this loading yet? Come on, optics. I know it always takes a bit to load everything the first time that you run the new software, so I'm just going to let it sit. Edgar says maybe you can clear cache somehow, get rid of precompiled kernels. Yeah, I wouldn't know where to go to do that. I do have a fair bit of issues though when I switch hardware because I use the same Dells and then just a couple newer computers to run all of these GPUs, and normally I won't uninstall the driver beforehand. I'll just swap out the card, and normally the driver installation goes okay, but the getting Blender to render the first time never seems to be smooth. Okay, now we got our kernels. So let's render this thing. I don't know. I don't know how long this scene normally takes, but this is actually my 4090 running the Lone Monk scene, and I didn't change any render settings. So it has the noise thresholds and denoise set on. It actually also has open shading language checkbox clicked. So not entirely sure how comparable they would be to older versions of it. That is pretty fast. Yeah, it's super fast. Yeah, the 4090, I'm telling you, is just absolutely insane. I play I play some games, not as much as I used to, but uh, I got BattleBit just for fun, and it runs like 15% of the GPU, and I don't even think the fans spin up, and it locks to 165 frames per second at 1440p. It's wild. I mean, any computer can play that game, but this one barely even blinks at it. All right. Okay, so we're almost done. Okay. Um, 1 minute and 36 and a half seconds. So let's add that. Let's add that to, I don't have one yet. Uh, let's just copy this. Move or copy. Create a copy to the end. Boom. There. Now we got a Lone Monk scene. 4090 on the Lone Monk scene took 96 and a half. We'll round it up to 97 seconds on optics. Cool. We might as well just keep testing some of those. Let's go back to render 10. So we already documented this. I'm gonna try to get Lone Monk going. I don't know what I changed other than just opening it in Blender 3.6. That seemed to fix whatever optics problem I had. Steam ID. We could make a squad. Yeah, yeah, dude. I have some friends that play occasionally. We'll probably play today, but um, I'll get a hold of you. I already got some contact info for Edgar, so I'll get a hold of you. We can play. What are we looking for here? We want to go to the Lone Monk scene. Yep. As much as I like Blender, sometimes you got to take a break from it and just play a game. I actually have a second YouTube channel for gaming. I just haven't used it very much. So I've now that I've launched my streaming on this channel, I'm not as afraid of it anymore. I may I may hop on there and stream some games too now. Okay, let's try to preview this. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So we're gonna do the render kernels are loading. We're gonna just leave, wait for that to go. I'm gonna remote back into. Do we have one open? Nope. I'm gonna remote back into render 3 here. Big YouTuber career taking off. Well, I don't know about that yet. I would say I'm very happy with the channel growth. I have a lot of people. Um, I have a lot of people that show up, watch my videos. I get a lot of subscribers the first day, so I'm very happy with how things are going. So I definitely can't complain. Um, but yeah, I finally got up the courage to stream, and then sure enough, I found out my internet is not anywhere near what it needs to be. So, but okay. This here is the 5700 XT, and I had it running the Lone Monk scene this whole time. It took 12 minutes and 49 seconds. That is kind of wild. 5700 XT, so 12 times 60 plus 49. Is that what I said? Yep. 769 seconds. And this is with HIP. Which one actually did I run? We got distracted doing some debugging over here. That was with HIP RT. So I don't think this result's going to change much. So I probably won't necessarily need to rerun it with both protocols, and I'll show you why I think that. Because in the barbershop, yep, here. In the classroom scene, once you let the shaders all compile and whatnot, the HIP and HIPRT for the 5700 XT seem to be the same result. So they got within a second of each other. I can test it further. I just don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference. It did actually add. Let's add a note here. This was 2.8 gigs of VRAM, and this was 3.8. Actually, you know what? I didn't know it would do that. That was cool. It added a column for me. Let's just say VRAM need. Well, let's say used. How about that? There. So HIPRT seems to hold more of the VRAM than HIP. And if you're on a 6000 series or newer, it's a lot faster too, but I think here it just added VRAM. And that's total system VRAM or total system VRAM use. So that's just what Task Manager was spitting out. Let's just do this. Nice. Sweet. Okay. Maybe trying it once. Trying what once? I can try it. Yeah, it's not a problem. Yeah, I can render all day long. It's they're intended to sit there and run. It is an intense scene, and switching between HIP and HIPRT might make a big difference. I don't know. Let's close our other image, and then we'll start this render. So now this is the 5700 XT without the RT checked on. This is Lone Monk on HIP. Still in 3.6. And my thought process is I'll run these tests all in 3.6 and just check that box on and off to toggle HIPRT. I just don't really want to go back and forth between Blender 3.5 and 3.6. So if you guys think that's not going to be a good test, then let me know. But I think the checkbox is what controls it and not so much the Blender version. So, okay, this looks like it's running all right. I'm going to turn that one down. And we're going to go back to render 10 because I want to test the Lone Monk scene on the 2080 Ti Kingpin. Come on, work. Sometimes I'm surprised how well this works. Edgar says, do I use 3.5 actively? I directly switch to 3.6 due to HIPRT and LTS. Yeah, most of my current projects all work in Blender 3.5. I don't think there were a lot of changes. The biggest thing is stuff like flip fluids, DAZ importer. What else do I have on there? A few other things. Especially add-ons aren't necessarily compatible, so I have to check into all those first. And then once I know the add-ons all work, then yeah, I'll go ahead and update it full time. I do know there were quite a few optimizations for certain things in general. I know UV unwrapping has changed a lot. I don't know if they had more sculpting optimizations in here for CPU use, but they had quite a few things that would just benefit everything. So 3.6 is a bit faster in most ways than 3.5. So I will eventually switch to it and I'll probably stay on it for a while. But yeah, let's try optics render with the 2080 Ti. So if you guys are looking for a decent budget option, I would look at 2080 Ti still. They really are super fast, and 11 gigs of VRAM is decent. So they're about a 3070, maybe a 3070 Ti-ish in speed, and probably slightly slower in pure ray tracing, just because the newer ray trace cores on the 30 series were better. But I would definitely not discount the 2080 Ti, and I think you can find them used for super cheap now. So that's a viable option if you're looking for as much VRAM as you can get for $400 or $500. All right. This isn't running too slow. Let's go find our charts here. Compute 0, CUDA. Oh, there you go. You can use the CUDA chart, I guess. Yeah. What about graphics? Does that work? Not really. Yeah, the biggest thing here, and I love hybrid cooled uh GPUs just because they take so much of the heat and get it out of the case. Most of them don't cover everything, so a lot of the 30 series GPUs had well, 3090s especially, they had VRAM chips on the back of the card and they didn't cool them. So those ones weren't all that great, but look at this. This 2080 Ti runs at full bore and it's 36 Celsius. It's insane how fast this model is. And its factory overclock is like, I want to say just at 2 gigahertz. So, yeah, I wouldn't say go buy a Kingpin because they're probably super expensive now, but I'm all about hybrids. The only problem is then you got to have that radiator somewhere, so you need a big case or honestly, like a mining frame with a normal motherboard. So you'd stick your GPUs in the slots, and then you would mount your radiators to that top of that mining frame. I've done that before for test, and that actually works out really well. But okay, so this thing's only about half done. Hopefully, Kingpin will find a new home, Edgar says. Yes, I absolutely have sat here and thought that for the last few months. Yeah, that's pushing the Radeons or arcs. Yeah, I honestly I have a lot of hope for Intel. We know what AMD's doing. They're gonna catch up. If not, they'll always be one generation behind with software support, but they still have great cards, and if Blender's not your only focus, they're great. Um, but if they get their software figured out, then they're definitely going to be right up there with anyone. But Intel, I feel like is a wild card, and like I said, I have an A770 coming in the mail. I think Tuesday, so I'll have a whole video about that probably. I'm super super excited to test that because if you look at the release notes, let's just pull it up here while this is running. We might as well. So you come to what's new, and they'll give you these kind of little extra what changed in Blender notes. But let's scroll down here to hardware ray tracing. So the one we've been testing a lot is HIPRT. So they're saying that like the secret deer scene almost doubled in speed. So 55 versus 100 for RP ray tracing. So almost twice as fast. This one, 75 is HIP, and these are scores, so higher is better. But 75 versus 100. So that one's 100 over 75. So what? Almost 50% or 35% boost. So if you come down here, though, this is the one that I was really interested in. Comparing Blender 3.5 and 3.6 with Intel. Um, with Intel Arc and data center GPUs, it looks like they went from 98 to 171 points. Oh no, wait, hold on. These are seconds. Okay, so now this chart's backwards. So um, Blender 3.5 Arc GPU went from 171 seconds down to 98, and the pavilion scene went from 74 down to 47. So very, very big jumps in speed. And I think that's all just driver improvements and other stuff. And they even they even still say in here improvements on this may come from future GPU drivers. So I know they're probably never going to catch up to where they could have been for this generation, but 16 gigs of VRAM, fairly fast processor in it. I'll put it to use. It'll be good. Um, I'm a huge pocket PC slash handheld PC gaming fan. Got the GPD Win 3 with Intel 11th and Iris Xe in mid 2021. At first, nothing worked. Lots of stutters, glitches, crashes. And now the newest drivers, it works quite nice. And Steam Deck is still better. Yeah, that's awesome though. You know, I think when all that came out, when Intel's newest stuff came out, people were not really too excited because the drivers were so bad and everybody kind of rolled their eyes. But yeah, they've definitely got them to be well, more than functional, but they've got them to be to where they're useful. So, oh, okay. Our 2080 Ti test here on the Lone Monk scene gave us 6 minutes and 9 seconds. So let's go note that. That's actually not too bad. RTX 2080 Ti Kingpin. And I said it was. Nope, wrong one. There we go. 6 minutes and 9 seconds. So 369 seconds. And that was on optics. So well, let's just do it. 369 over 97. Huh. So the 4090 in the Lone Monk scene is 3.8 times faster than the 2080 Ti Kingpin. Edgar says Arc A770 with RT and XeSS is quite beefy in Cyberpunk 2077. RT on Arc is actually way more advanced than RDNA 2 or even 3. Well, that's interesting. I'll be curious to see. Hopefully they do get a couple like Blender specific drivers that just completely knock it out of the park. Because if it can be anywhere near um like a 4070 with more VRAM and way less cost, then I'll be absolutely thrilled. And yeah, like, if you're going to play games, if they've got the gaming drivers figured out now, then you're probably safe to go ahead and get Intel GPUs. I don't normally test games, so I can't tell you for sure what the deal is, but yeah, I'm super excited to try it. I think it comes Tuesday, but Newegg had a deal on it. I think I was able to get one for like 280 US dollars. So, normally I see them for like 450 or 400 or something, so I grabbed one. But okay. What are we on here? This was render 10 scene. Yeah, so I love this Kingpin GPU. I'm gonna miss EVGA. I think part of their problem was they were just too nice, and their customer service was expensive. Because anytime somebody had a problem, they would just send you a new one basically, or they'd try to repair yours. So um, I think partly they couldn't make enough margin on their equipment because they were so helpful to people. And then I know that the margins they're allowed to take from Nvidia weren't enough, at least according to what they said. So their their motherboard factory actually just all the employees walked out, so they're kind of done with making motherboards now too. So that's great. But it is what it is, I guess. Okay. So what else should we run here? Let's run I think we've got the 4090 tested on a few of these. We can run Barbershop on the workstation here real quick. Just to have the data. This one rips through Barbershop pretty fast. What else do we need to get? I really wish my Vegas were working because I know a lot of people originally bought Vega GPUs for workstation purposes back in the day. And um, people have them around still. So they are very inefficient relatively. I think the 6600 probably beats them in performance, or it's very close for less power. But if you have 10 of them laying there, you may as well use them. Yaki says, okay, so now I got a valid debug. It gives a GL invalid frame buffer operation. Interesting. Do you have the viewport set to OpenGL? Hmm. How would how would you even do that though? Um, Yaki, yeah, make sure in your preferences you have your GPU set onto HIP. I'm sure you have. Oh, okay. Yeah, so if you watch what I'm doing, go to edit preferences, and then you can look at the cycles render devices. And if you already know this, then stop me. But for AMD, you're gonna come over here to HIP, and then as long as your card is set up, then you should be good to go. It'll show up in the list down here, kind of like my 4090 does here. We wanted to go to Barbershop. Yeah, we'll run Barbershop. We'll run Classroom. Gotta love those not responding screens on Blender all the time, though. Okay, no, it is not that. All right. What would it be? Um, it sounds like frame buffer would be a VRAM problem, though. I will probably steal the 3070 Ti back from my kid. Hey, if you at least try it and see if there's something going on there. There's also an uh always an off chance that a driver isn't done right or Blender has a bug in it. You would think there's enough people with AMD's highest end GPU from last generation in Blender that they would already know that, but you never know. All right. So this is frame 100 on the 4090 of the barbershop scene. So I'm going to run this real fast. It gives that error way before the crash happens. Oh. Hmm. So it spits errors out while it's loading, but then it continues to run the render or try to, and then it crashes? Or does the render never get loaded? Wow. Well, this just the 4090 just ran the barbershop frame 100 in 35 seconds. I feel like that's kind of ridiculous. 35, right? Yeah. Sheesh. That's wild. Yeah, Yaki says my setup worked great with NVIDIA and AMD worked fine before the 3070 Ti. I got that because I wanted to use Octane render. Oh, okay. But now Cycles can do baking from camera view, so Octane is obsolete. I see. Very interesting. Yeah, that is definitely a world I have not got into yet. I can animate a little bit. I do a lot of simulations, but compositing and light baking and stuff, I am not up to snuff on that yet. Okay. So we got that one. I mean, I guess let's run the classroom scene really fast with the 4090. It's not really gonna tell us anything useful, but we'll do it for fun. So Cycles can do baking from camera view. So Cycles will bake um, lighting. Is that what you're saying? So you don't have to render it out and then layer it or composite it. Okay. All right. Here is the 4090 doing the classroom, and it's done. Yep, 9 seconds. That's kind of what I expected. Not a super useful scene for that, but data is data. 9 seconds, and that's the fun thing about. Um, hey, Yaki, good to meet you. Hopefully, you can get your stuff figured out. If I find anything, or if I can figure out the problem, I will. Um, I'll try to post something, and maybe you'll see it. Um, Otherwise, maybe just comment on this, and then I have a way to talk to you. But hopefully, we can get it figured out for you. But thanks for coming in, and I always love to have new people in. Okay. Um, Barbershop scene. What else should we do? I just, I just really, really, really want the Vegas to work. I have, I have like three of them. I just don't want to go walk over into the other room and switch a GPU out right now. I don't want to make you guys just sit here and wait. So, uh, maybe we won't do that. What else can we test though? We do have the 6700 XT. So I can get that running. I think that's on render 9. Nope, that's on render 5. So let's try render 5. Yeah, so it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. We had um, strange results where the 67 and the 6600s were not getting a benefit from HIPRT originally, and then I traded out the drivers to the newest, the 23.7.1 drivers, with the Adrenaline software, and now they work great. So if you have a 6000 series AMD GPU and you want to render faster, make sure you have the newer drivers. Okay. Yes. Connect to the computer you've already connected to multiple times. Not sure why that's always a problem. Come on, work. Okay. So we'll load up Blender 3.6 and we'll try the Lone Monk scene, I think. Yeah, so I would say if you're looking for high VRAM GPUs though, 6700 XT is okay, under $300. But honestly, I just got the Arc A770 for 280, and that's probably going to just be a better deal in the long run, if especially if drivers keep getting better. Um, Otherwise, I would seriously consider a 4060 Ti with the 16 gigs of VRAM, but $500 seems pretty silly. So I'm gonna try to get one tested somehow. I don't really want to spend that much on one, honestly. So maybe I'll try to figure out a way to swap hardware with somebody for a little bit. But yeah, we will see. We also need to go back to HIP or to render 4 and check on that HIP versus HIP RT, don't we? Let's do that too. 3 or 4? 3. Lone Monk with, yeah, let's go get that data. I think that's already done. I just forgot to grab it. So let's go look at render 3 quick. Come on, come on, come on. I always just have this fear when I try to remote into these machines that like it's just gonna not work and I have to go reconfigure it because they seem to disconnect sometimes. But all right, Blender render. Here we go. So this was the 5700 XT Lone Monk scene with um no okay with no RT turned on, and it was 11 minutes and 44 seconds. So a little faster. 11 times 60 plus 44, so 704 seconds. See, and that's just I'm not buying it. I think it's just loading time. Yeah. So nope, this was HIP. So HIP running faster than HIP RT, I think, is just because the first test, the initial loading of the RT version took longer. So I might actually just run it one more time now that it's not going to have to do that. Because I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. So I'm going to render this one more time. We'll come back in about 12 minutes and I'll document what we get. But okay, there's our pointless classroom test on the 4090. Basically, at a 9-second test, there's not much going on anymore. It's just loading, spits it out real fast, and then saving. So, okay, let's see what else. Yeah, and I'll probably test the 5700 and the Vega 56 on my diamond scene too. I don't know if I really need to use that extensive of a test, but um, at least then I'd be able to compare it to everything I already have. What else? Barcelona scene I couldn't get to work right, but I don't think that one's very intense, so probably just take it out, honestly. But yeah, I couldn't get it to work. The textures weren't loading, so I just don't think it was worthwhile the other night. think I think retesting all of these GPUs on my diamond scene is going to be the next step because um, HIPRT does seem to make a at least measurable and at most huge difference for 6000 series and newer cards. So I will run all of my results again and I'll make a new tab for um, this here for the diamond test scene. So actually, let's just do it now. Move to end, create copy, boom. Okay, and we'll slide it right over here, and we'll call it 3.6. Whoops. There we go. And then we'll come in here and clear all this stuff out. So, Edgar says it's nice that the barbershop is like twice as intense as classroom, and Lone Monk is like twice as intense as barbershop on the default settings. Yeah, yeah. And that's my results may or may not compare to what everyone else uses. I try to just leave them where they're at and then be done with it. I don't know if people always run the same settings, but at least internally, like all of my tests will compare to each other just fine. But yes, I think it's good to have not only just more intense scenes, but also scenes that test different things. So one thing like the light reflections in my little diamond scene is what I was trying to get. They're fairly minor. I'd like to make a more intense one with caustics, and then um, I think I need to add a scene with very heavy volumetrics because if anything kills my GPUs the most, it's volumetrics like fog. Uh, Honestly, fog and then hair strands. If they have realistic shaders on them, they're brutal as well. So I think for now, I am just going to be sitting here starting some of these machines on the diamond test scene. So, if you want to hang out and sit around with me, I'll just watch my views, and if people stick around, then then I'll keep the stream running. If people are over it, I'll probably kill it here in a bit. But um, hair fog and caustics. Edgar says maybe a mermaid in the rough misty ocean. Yeah, actually, um, that'd be kind of cool one. Maybe I'll make an animation too, because then I can test like different denoisers and denoising settings as well. So I had some questions on comments about using noise threshold versus just cranking up samples. So um, with flip fluid, yeah. See, Edgar, you're just trying to kill my computers here. I think you're throwing everything at it here. You know, I'd like to use the ocean modifier instead of flip fluids just because the file gets so big, but um, maybe I could make some waves or something. But funny enough, Daz Studio has or Daz 3D has a mermaid character that I might just grab and throw in a scene. Now that you say that, I always end up having to redo the rigs on my own because the combined characters like mermaids or centaurs or whatever always have problems, but um, that would be a fairly easy one to rig. So maybe I'll do that just because you came up with that right now. But yeah, I rendered a scene for MRU Studios um, where an F-14 jet flew through some clouds, and it was a big wide shot, and it was absolutely insane how long some of the frames were taking the 4090, 4 or 5 minutes, and it's all just the volumetric light scattering and that stuff. It's just intense. But yeah, it shows the artistic freedom needs some power. It does. It really does. And that's we're getting to a point where almost anybody will be able to just um, get an affordable machine and do what they want, but we're not quite there yet. So, uh, yeah, I mean, people just you can model with about any computer now, and you can do some texturing, but if you start to get into rendering and simulating, it's still brutal. It's still brutal how expensive it is in power and hardware. So, but things always move forward in the tech field, and hopefully we'll uh, hopefully we'll all be able to do what we want, you know, without having to give an arm and a leg, I guess. I think the problem too, though, is that it people just get like more used to the next highest resolution. So over time, if you look at stuff people were making 10 years ago, um, they can you could still make that stuff now for way 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 less electricity and way cheaper hardware, but people don't want to. They want to push it, and now everything they want 4K, they want ultra realistic graphics. It's the same problem with games, because some games looked very similar 10 years ago or 8 years ago to what they do now. They might have a little bit more resolution, but they're pushing visual fidelity so much instead of gameplay design or story design. So I think it's almost like not not mission creep, but almost where it's just people just expect to be able to run something ultra crazy. Looking at the first Toy Story from 1995 is rough. Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. And it it still took a lot of hardware to render, but I guess what I'm saying is we could be making things that are slightly better than that really fast now. You could most likely run it on iPhone in real time. Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's what I mean. That's what I mean. People are so obsessed with how can we make stuff more complex? We need better hardware, where you really could just optimize some things, be happy with a certain style, and you wouldn't really need such high end hardware. I think the hardware manufacturers, all the CPUs, GPUs, everybody, they're really good at selling um, the narrative that you need the newest thing, or you're not going to be able to run anything, and that's it's not really the case. It's just uh, you're not going to be able to run the brand new over designed thing. So, but here I sit testing all of these cards. So I think they still won because I bought them all. So I can't say too much about it, I guess. All right. Yeah, this Lone Monk scene is pretty intense. I wonder why. It must just be a lot of extra texture, huh? Oh, okay. Well, this will be done in a minute. I'm going to get some other stuff started. I started my channel in 2006 with some Cinema 4D renderings. Single core Athlon 64 with 1.8 gigahertz. Nice. Nice. Yep, that is. See, then you know. Um you know what I mean then. Somehow I didn't miss cycles or ray tracing back then. Well, no, because back then that was what there was. So here in 4 years we're going to be saying, "Man, you remember when a RTX 4090 was fast?" It'll always just it'll always just move fast enough to sell new things and not solve all the problems. Okay, this one's almost done. Got about 500 samples here, and then I'm just going to start the diamond scene on a bunch of computers and let them run for a bit. And then, yeah. So, anyway, for anyone that sees it later, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching it. Consider liking, subscribing, all that stuff. Trying to grow this thing, so it helps to have you on board. Later this week, so it'd be probably July 18th, I'll be testing an Intel Arc A770 with 16 gigs of VRAM, and Blender supposedly has some new speedups for it, so I'll be testing that probably Tuesday or Wednesday. Um, and reporting any of my new test results that I get in between. Also, watch for the next phase of the low poly Minotaur character. I'll probably finish out that whole series in the next week and just get it to a point where it's fairly decent and finished and can animate it and everything. And then I might make a single video that covers the whole process and kind of just redo it. So um, that's what's coming up next. And yeah, thanks for watching. So I'll stick around for a minute, but not too long. Okay. So this is the 5700 XT. It just got done with the Lone Monk scene. I ran it one more time on what are we on? HIPRT to make sure the loading time didn't kill it. And I think it's actually the same result. So it was where'd it go? 12 minutes and 47 seconds. So 767. So it got within 2 seconds of the first test. Now, I think that's all there is. So your HIP RT is actually slower on 5000 series cards. So if you don't have an RT enabled AMD GPU, don't use HIP RT. Just use the normal HIP for now. That seems to be the result I'm getting. Super, super interesting. So yeah, so if it's 6000 or newer, definitely use HIPRT. If it's 5000 or older, do not use HIPRT, just use HIP. That seems to be the best result. Here is the results from the other night. This is testing the classroom and barbershop, and they're grouped in pairs, so uh, HIPRT in all cases gave a speed up in the 6600 and 6700 XTs of about 14.3% total on average for these tests. But I think the more RT cores your machine has, the more it's going to help. So if you have a 6800 XT or higher, and any newer AMD GPUs, any 7000 series, are probably going to be significant boosts in speed, going from HIP to HIP RT. So just keep that in mind. So we're gonna get all the results compiled for these various tests, so that you have a good comparison. But yeah, that's it. That's what we got for now. So I am going to basically just start a bunch of these rendering my own test scene, and that'll be about it for this stream. So when everybody's kind of taken off, then I'll just call it quits. All right, this is the 5700 XT scene. Diamonds HIP. I have different versions of the diamond scene with minor setting tweaks to avoid bugs. Let's go into preferences. We're going to run HIP RT. I don't have an HIP result on my diamond scene for the 5700, but I probably won't get one unless somebody really, really wants it, because this is going to take a couple hours. So probably not necessarily worthwhile. Let's add a folder in here. Let's just call it 5700 XT test. Then I come in here, output settings, change the folder. Make sure everything looks okay. Let's see. Let's make sure the scene loads. Yeah, looks pretty good. Okay. Then render animation. Okay, so I'm gonna run this on all of the GPUs that we've talked about. So the Kingpin, the 5700 XT. I'm gonna get a Vega 56 going, and then I'll retest all of my 6000 series cards with the new HIPRT, and I'll have a new list of data here in a couple days. It's going to take me a little bit to run all these things and then compile them. So if you want to see, like, on average, I'll summarize a few of the averages of basically what percentage speed ups you get. But free speed boost is never a bad thing, and that's what we're looking at here with Blender 3.6 for AMD. So yeah, I'm just gonna start running these scenes on all of my machines, and we'll go from there. $6,700 XT. Let's get a new one. So I removed the old frames. Um, Basically, I tested this before and couldn't find HIPRT did anything. And then I got the right driver, and now it does. Now it does it quite a bit. So I'm going to rerun this. Okay, good to go. And that's one thing I do. But before I start a render, I always go into the viewport shading mode to make sure that the scene looks like it's supposed to and I'm not missing textures or anything like that. Like if your flip fluids version is not matching the Blender version, the fluid surface itself won't show up. So it's worthwhile to note that that can be a good check. And Yaki, who was in here, was having a problem with loading the viewport shading, but not with rendering. So that's super weird. I guess I should make sure we have RT enabled, huh? Yep. Okay. So I have a lot of different results with the 6000 series cards on this scene. So I will just rerun them with HIPRT. I'm not going to test Blender 3.6 with normal HIP in this scene because this one takes way too long anyway. So I will let that one go. Just go on to the next one. Next one I'm going to do is render 10 with the Kingpin. Maybe. Edit preferences, optics, 2080 Ti. Nope, why are we in this file? That's not what I want. Diamonds. Load this. Okay, it's going to take a minute, so let's go make a folder for 2080 Ti test. Okay. And I actually see that this is loading Blender 3.5, so I'm going to switch to 3.6. Might as well. So I need to remember to open through the link and not the default. There we go. All right, here we go. I am curious to see how this 2080 Ti will compare to 3080s and 3080 Ti's. Because with this overclock, it should compete with a 3080. Render kernels sure take a while. Okay. Which ones do I even have with? I could run the 5500s in this machine, but I don't probably won't yet. Let's try render 9, see if that's on. Um how does it compare to my thermal throttled 3070 Ti mobile? The Kingpin, you mean? It's probably a little faster. But actually that's probably a fairly good test because even though you're thermal throttling in a laptop, you do have newer ray trace cores, and I think that means a lot more than most of the specs about the card. So um, we will see. We will see what the difference is. I know the card people would normally compare to it is the 3070 for gaming. So um, you know, definitely definitely could be either way. Um, looks like render 9 is off, so I'll have to restart it. I found that when I boot up my AMD workstations, um, I have to have a monitor plugged in, or they like hang loading Windows, so then I can't remote into them. Otherwise, yeah. So I plug in a TV with an HDMI cable when they boot, and then as soon as I see Windows pop up, I can unplug it, and they're fine. 3070 Ti mobile is more like a 3060 desktop. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I imagine the Kingpin will it'll destroy it if we're being real. But honestly though, 3060 is a good card, so that's I mean that's a good laptop anyway though. I have a I have a mobile 2060 in my laptop, and um it definitely does plenty. Does what I want it to. Okay, let's see how these render. I imagine fairly decent. So this one's probably going to be it might be right around the 4070. So like even this one will probably be an hour and 15 minutes. So like I'm definitely going to let these just sit here and probably come back to it, but man, I don't know. With loading 40 seconds for a frame, that that's going to be right at like a 3080 Ti. I don't know. We'll see. I would say if that was the case, if this is about a 3080 approximately, um, then these would be a actually really good deal versus new cards because they're super cheap right now. But uh-oh. I hear a fan buzzing in the room over there. I'm gonna go check it out. I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm back. The fan power cord for the 2080 Ti Kingpin, the little cable had got warm enough to be ductile, and it sagged and got into one of the fans. You should see. I can't share images on here, but um, you you would have to see what happened. The radiator is just sitting out of the case on its own for these tests, and a fan cord just got into it and it was buzzing. I could hear it from here, thankfully, so it didn't actually end up cutting it. But yes, set up your hardware properly if you don't want to run into problems. That's what I can say. So anyway, okay. Well, I got a few other machines to start, and then I just got a few hours to sit here and wait for them to run. So I am gonna call it good for now. Thanks to everybody that tuned in. It's a lot of fun for me to do this. Um, yeah, that's it for today, and look for more coming soon. And remember that Intel GPUs come in this week, so that'll be a pretty good test. Otherwise, thank you, and we'll see you again shortly.